Hello and welcome to PolicyCast. The US Supreme Court recently ruled against President Donald Trump's emergency tariffs. The decision is expected to have a significant impact on global trade relations and the economic policies. In the wake of uncertainty stemming from the US Supreme Court's decision, we are joined by Vikas Vasal, Global Tax Head, Grand Thornton International, to discuss implications of this decision on the global trade policies. Welcome to our PolicyCast, Vikas. My first question to you is, how do you construe the recent US Supreme Court ruling on tariffs and what implications do you see for global trade policy?
Thanks, Shilpa, for inviting me. I think it's a very interesting and topical issue that business leaders and businesses across the globe are facing today. The recent US Supreme Court ruling signifies a major recalibration of the executive's authority over the trade policy. If you look at the ruling, the court has held that the International Emergency Economic Powers, in short IEEPA, this act does not give the president unilateral authority to impose broad across-the-board tariffs. It has further said that this power remains with the Congress unless it is explicitly delegated through a clear statutory language. However, this ruling does not spell out how the refunds will be claimed. Certain media reports estimate the potential refund claims to be about $175 billion. Now, in order to claim the same, the US buyers, who are the importers of record as per the law, would need to navigate through the complex judicial and administrative process, which is not an easy thing. Therefore, it questions how much and how many refunds will actually be processed. Another important aspect to note here is the manufacturers and exporters who have sent goods to the US and who had reduced the prices earlier in response to these tariff demands, they have no local stand-eye to claim these refunds, which means that they will bear the commercial impact, whereas reimbursement, if any, would be claimed by the US buyers themselves. Interestingly, while this ruling invalidated the tariffs, it does not end the tariff uncertainty. I repeat, it does not end the tariff uncertainty because the US administration quickly pivoted to introduce new sections and new tariffs. In fact, they immediately introduced a 10% temporary tariff under Section 122 of the Trade Act, which was later revised to 15%, which is valid for about 150 days unless the Congress extends it further. In parallel, the US administration is also thinking of launching new investigations and introduce sector-specific tariff measures through various legislative provisions. All this creates a sort of short cycle rolling tariff regime which adds to the unpredictability facing global markets. If I have to sum up in other words, for countries and businesses, this means recalibrating supply chains and reassessing exposure to the US market. It also casts a shadow over trade agreements with the US, both the existing ones and which are under negotiation, thereby raising questions around predictability and reciprocity, thereby leading to uncertainty. Shilpa, over to you.
Well, this sounds pretty interesting as it seems that there's a lot more to come. My second question is, given the current global macroeconomic uncertainty from geopolitical tensions to supply chain realignments, how do you see economic policy frameworks evolving across major economies?
Again, an interesting question which will be the outcome of the various developments and the Supreme Court ruling. I think for decades, globalization was a dominant economic philosophy, which meant reducing barriers, integrating markets, and connecting producers and consumers with minimum friction. And that was what was the trade policy all across. This lowered the cost for consumers worldwide and also created millions of jobs in the developing world. But now the world order has changed. Now tariffs and taxes are increasingly becoming the instruments of economic weaponization, which means it is compelling the governments to prioritize their national interests even at the cost of higher prices, reduced efficiencies, and supply chain disruptions. In fact, if we look at it, the long-standing economic understandings or the alliances are being re-evaluated. In a sense, if you ask me, globalization is giving way now to strategic protectionism. The result is a more complex and a fragmented landscape marked by tariffs and counter tariffs, frequent policy resets, and continuous business adjustments, which our clients are also telling us. As this transition stabilizes over a period of time, countries and regional blocs are exploring and will continue to explore new frameworks for cooperation through trade agreements, industrial policy coordination, and technology-focused partnerships like we are hearing a lot of buzz around the AI these days. Now we are witnessing the contours of new multipolar economic order with new power centers and new rules of engagement evolving every day. Broadly, if you ask me, major economies will move towards adaptive and defensive, legislatively anchored policy framework which are designed for a world where unpredictability is not an exception but the baseline, which is also a topic of our discussion. Shilpa, I hope I have answered your question on this subject.
We also hope that the uncertainties settle and the geopolitical tensions ease out for a robust economic policy framework across major economies. So the next question to you is, in this environment of policy flux and global volatility, what strategic steps should Indian businesses and CXOs take to stay resilient and competitive?
So, Shilpa, I think this is one question which is often asked to me by various Indian business leaders. And if I will be frank enough to say that there are no simple answers to that. The path ahead requires Indian businesses and Indian leaders to realign and recalibrate, which means from production footprints and supply chain design to contract structures and payment cycles. It is challenging, it will be challenging, but it's unavoidable. In this context, I think three strategic priorities stand out. First, leverage the markets with favorable trade agreements. And why do I say so? Indian companies should strengthen their presence in the markets where India has signed new trade agreements or enjoys favorable tariff or policy conditions. These markets provide relative stability and preferential access, which is critical to my mind in the current volatile global landscape. Moving on, second point. I think Indian businesses should look at renegotiating their contract terms with the US buyers. I know it's difficult, and to the extent it is feasible, it should be considered. Given the experience of the past year and the recent Supreme Court ruling, contracts with US buyers should evolve. And why do I say so is because businesses should consider now incorporating true-up and clawback mechanisms, which in most cases were not there, and that's the reason that Indian businesses or the exporters or manufacturers will not be eligible to claim the refunds in the US despite the favorable ruling. Now, if you build in certain clauses like true-ups and clawback mechanisms, it ensures that any changes in future, either through rulings or policy outcomes, will help Indian businesses get their fair share of the price adjustments done earlier. And last but not the least, I think we must mentally prepare to embrace the new reality, which is uncertainty is a new certainty. Business leaders must internalize this new macroeconomic reality. Scenario planning, which is alternative structures and alternative options, should become a staple for boardroom discussions. Companies must rethink their global footprint and actively explore new and emerging markets, as we discussed, especially where India has signed or is signing free trade agreements. And organizations that will adapt fast with agility and foresight will be the ones that will emerge stronger in this new world order as India gains its due position in the new multipolar world. Thanks, Shilpa. Over to you.
Understood. So clearly the winners here would be the ones who embraces uncertainty and move ahead in accordance with the global trade policies.
Absolutely, Shilpa. I think we will have to embrace uncertainty, be agile, and adapt to the new economic reality, and accordingly frame our business policies and strategies around that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vikas, for sharing your views on the implications of the US Supreme Court ruling on global trade policies. We hope this discussion helped our listeners to understand the implications and give them a possible way forward. We will be back soon with more expert conversations on tax, trade, and policy. Until then, thanks for tuning into PolicyCast.